Welcome to week 34. Today we'll be doing our usual 16th note syncopation warm-up, and I'm very happy to say that we will be doing our intro to Diminished 7th and the octatonic scale today. So that's going to be really exciting. It's our very last subject in this very long unit. The light is at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there. All right? And then, of course, once we figure that out, we'll be incorporating the diminished 7th into our usual 4-note chord drill. All right? So let's go over to the drum and get rhythmically warmed up. Let's get things started on line 1. The metronome will be set to 40 BPM, and those will represent our downbeats. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top on hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Let's move on to line 2. We'll speed our metronome up to 45 BPM. It will now represent our upbeats. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Switch your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Top on hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, here we go. Of course, we've got to do one of these, right? So for line 3, we're going to have all 16th notes. So just sit back, enjoy the ride. Remember, we definitely want to count on a rhythm like this because it's very easy to get lost when you're playing one constant rhythm. So it's very important to stay with our downbeats. Now for our metronome, we'll be putting that on halftime. So while we are going to be technically speeding up to 50 BPM, the metronome will be at halftime at 25 BPM, and it will represent the first and the third beats. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Change your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Top line hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we are. Alrighty, so last but not least, let's check out line 4. We're going to speed our metronome up to 30, which means we are going to be going at 60. And now let's take a look at this line 4 with the metronome representing the 2nd and the 4th downbeat. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Top line hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head back to the piano. Let's talk about the fully diminished 7th chord. Now, we're going to be looking at a few different diagrams today, but remember, I always say the most important thing is what these things look like on the piano, because diminished chord diagrams can get kind of hairy, kind of confusing, double sharps, double flats, and things like that. But it's actually a very easy concept, especially if you just think about it from the perspective of the keyboard. All right? Now let's start out by talking about the major 7. All right? So far, in our exploration of 4-note chords, we've been playing various chords. And so far, every single one of those sounds has been a mixture of major thirds and minor thirds. And major thirds again. Or major third, minor third, minor third. Or minor third, major third, minor third. Or minor third, major third. Now, because of all that mixed match of thirds, we have had a lot of different variations of these chords to practice. We've had to do an individual variation for every key. However, when we finally do our fully diminished chord, right? So we're going to have our Do, we're going to have our flat 3rd, our flat 5th, and then from half diminished, we had a flat 7, we're going to have a double flat 7, right? So the double flat is when you take a note, you flat it once, you flat it twice. So this would be our C fully diminished chord. Now, the thing that is unique about this sound is that it is only made of minor thirds. And because of that, because it is only minor thirds, there are only going to be 3 of these shapes, okay? Which means that every note in this chord could be its root. So there really is no such thing as an inversion of a diminished chord, because whatever note is on bottom is the root of that chord. All right? Now, let's talk about how we can find those 3 shapes. So if you start on the first diminished chord that we just talked about, the C diminished, and we go up a half step on each of those notes, you'll get a diminished chord built off of D flat or C sharp. And if you'll notice, let's look at what these look like, right? In this one, we have 2 black notes on the outside and 2 white notes on the inside. Whereas that's exactly the opposite of what we just saw, where it was 2 white notes on the outside and 2 black keys on the inside, right? So we go up a half step and we get our D flat or C sharp diminished chord. Let's bring each note up 1 more half step into this shape. Now this is the odd one out, right? It doesn't look like either of them, and it's really not even symmetrical, seeing as that we have 2 white keys and 1 black key here and then 1 white key here. So, you know, this is the odd one out of the 3. But the interesting thing is that when we go up one more half step, right, to here, we find that we have made it back to the very first chord that we started on. And so that is why we only have 3 of these shapes to worry about. And remember, whatever note is on the bottom is going to ultimately be the root of that chord. Here we have each of those 3 variations that we just talked about, okay? And if you look at the chord, we have it written as C, E flat, G flat, and A for our first C diminished chord, right? Now, for our C fully diminished chord, this is how you would write it. When you go up to the E flat, you would have to write it like this. Now look how ugly that can get. There are 2 double flats in an E flat fully diminished chord. That's why sometimes people might want to write it as D sharp. It really is all about the context. Whatever you call a diminished chord is going to depend on the context of the piece and what it is functioning as. They are very cool chords. They have many different functions. And so, you know, you'll have to use the name appropriately as the situation calls. But as you can see, for our G flat fully diminished, we have 3 double flats. Now, don't let this freak you out. It doesn't matter, because what really matters is if you can remember the shape of this chord on the keyboard in the way that we just looked at it, right? And then of course, for our A, we have this, alrighty? Now right underneath this, we can see a scale. And now we will talk about the octatonic scale, all right? Now here's the thing, we call it the octatonic scale because it has 8 individual notes, and the 9th note is the repeating note, all right? So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 unique notes, and then we finally repeat the octave on the 9th note, right? And so therefore we call this an octatonic scale. Now the thing about the octatonic scale is that it's very easy to find, because just like the diminished chord, which is all minor thirds, this is also a perfectly symmetrical scale, unlike all of the crazy combinations of whole steps and half steps that we've seen so far throughout our major scales and modes. This one is simply alternating between whole steps and half steps, okay? And so all you're going to have to do when you play this scale is start on whichever note of the chord, right, you're playing, and then you can simply go up alternating whole steps and half steps. Now we're going to take a look at these on the piano, all right, over the next 3 weeks as we drill each of these. But just to go ahead and plant the seed, you know, like I said, it is important that we think about the shapes of these things on the piano, because honestly, whole steps and half steps don't mean that much to me. What means something to me is the shape of each one of these scales that has become very familiar for me over the course of performing with them for so many years, right? And so we have some similarities. I believe that number 1 and number 3 look very similar, and we will see this again. All right, I'm just planting the seed today, but these 2 scales look very similar. And in this case, number 2 would be the unique octatonic scale, although, even though it's a unique one, in my opinion, it's also the most symmetrical one. And so number 2, in my opinion, is the easiest to remember because of its symmetry, but then number 1 and number 3 are going to be easy because they look similar, all right? However, let's not get too ahead of ourselves because we're only going to be looking at one of these each week, all right? So let's get started today with our C, E flat, G flat, and A diminished chords with their accompanying octatonic scale. Let's get things started with this fully diminished chord number 1. And we'll start with inversions in our right hand. Let's do the inversions in our left hand. Let's do one chord with 2 hands. And now we're going to do our left hand chords and our right hand scale, and it's going to go like this. First, we're going to play our octatonic scale starting on C with C in the bottom. Such a cool sound. Then we're going to move up to our E flat position. We're going to play the same octatonic scale, but this time we're going to start from E flat. Again, we'll move up and we'll start our octatonic scale from G flat. One more time up to A. And why not? Let's do C one more time. And then let's switch things. So first we're going to play the C one in our right hand and the scale in our left hand. Let's do from E flat. Let's go from G flat. And one more time, let's go from A. I wanted to refer back to the outline really quick and go over this little small cheat sheet that I have created to condense all the information that we've talked about so far. All right, so the first thing is fully diminished. There are only 3. All right, the first thing we talked about, and the reason for that is that they are all minor thirds. Next, we have the octatonic scale, which is alternating whole steps and half steps, just like that. And then what I did is I created some tables that are in the shape of the piano keys. This is sort of how I visualize these things. This is how, my memory recalls them when I'm using them on the piano. And so you can see that each individual one is going to be our octatonic scale. And as you can see, this one and this one, if I get these purple things out of the way, look similar, where we have 1 black key and then 2 black keys, and over here we have 2 black keys and then 1 black key, and then this one is different. However, it's very symmetrical, okay? And then, of course, our red notes within that scale are going to represent the actual chord itself, okay? If you enjoyed today's lesson, you can find these diagrams, show notes, and much more on my website at pianodojo.com. Please feel free to subscribe or share this channel with anybody who's looking for answers about the piano. Until next time, happy practicing.